Some people call it a digital minister. Some people say it's a ministry without name. What kind of ministry are you? Do you lead?
So I am the digital minister in charge of open government, social innovation, and youth engagement. In the Taiwan cabinet, there are 32 vertical ministries with a vertical minister. But above the 32, there's 9 horizontal ministers. We don't have any specific ministry, but we work with all the different ministries to coordinate between them.
So open government.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah.
It's okay, we have a lot of time. Yeah. The fixer can take all the time that she needs.
Okay. Es ist egal.
Es ist egal?
Es ist egal.
Okay.
Open government, today we were at a meeting where the question is, when you think of normal democratic governments, to pass a law it takes quite a while. So what is the difference now?
So in traditional representative democracy, usually it is the MPs that does the listening for the constituents. But that was because using television and radio, there's no way for people to listen to millions of people, only to speak to millions of people. And so in the join.gov.tw website, where we have 10 million visitors out of 23 million in Taiwan, anyone can start a new petition. For example, we just talked about today whether to lift the speed limit for our superhighways. And that is a German idea. They actually said if the Germany can do it, Taiwan can surely. And they got thousands of people to sign that petition. And so we have the Ministry of Transportation and Communication in our meeting to explain how they plan to engage with such a petitioner.
So when you think of open government, a lot of people would say, oh, well, that's a little bit too much democracy, probably. What is that the answer of a more modern democracy, or how would you judge it?
So to a public service, usually, as you said, there's quite a few fear, uncertainty, and doubt. When people think about thousands of people online, they feel like they're being swarmed by kind of mobs that may feel very angry about a particular issue. But open government is about the government trusting the citizens to behave in a civilized way. When we open up the agenda setting power to the citizen, it reduces the risk, because if the government do something and the people doesn't like it, the people can call the stop much earlier than before. It reduces the people's burden because the public service doesn't have to come up with all the answers. The citizen can co-create the answers. And most importantly, people trust each other more after each deliberation.
At the same time, we're in a very high-speed age of news and information. What about disinformation? What kind of role, and how can you control it in an open government? So disinformation have a legal definition in Taiwan. It has to be intentional untruths that harm the public. So not harming the image of a minister, which is just good journalism, but harming the democratic process as a whole. And so given this legal definition, we can see plainly that there are two obvious ways, as you said. One is to control it, which is what our nearby jurisdictions have sometimes do, using, quote, harmony, unquote, as the kind of driving value by punishing people who post things that may or may not be true. But on the other hand, Taiwan is the only jurisdiction in Asia that have remained that the journalist's words is actually the same, even better, than the minister's words. That is to say, we did not fight disinformation by outlawing certain free expression. Instead, we made sure that we catch up with the timely response. And so whenever there is a trending disinformation in all the ministry that you saw today, there's a team tasked with rolling out a funny clarification message, what we call a mimetic engineering product. So the memes are the things that want to be shared, that people find it funny. And so whenever there is such a message, for example, there was a message that says, if you perm your hair many times within a week, you'll be fined $1 million. Of course, that's not true. But the clarification, if we simply say it's not true, it becomes something that is not very funny, and so not as viral as the original rumor. However, they are now tasked with rolling out within 2 hours this picture, which says it's not true, and our Prime Minister, when he was young, has some hair, and a younger version of the Prime Minister says, I may be bald now, but I will not punish people with hair. And then the clarification message says, what we did is introducing a labeling requirement. It takes place on 2021, and the Prime Minister, as he looks now, says, however, if you perm your hair many times a week, it will not damage your pocket, it will damage your hair, and when serious, you may look like me. And so this is really good humor because he makes fun of himself, not other people. And if you search for these keywords, you always see these clarification codes instead of the original disinformation. So by making the clarifications more trendy and more fun and more viral than the disinformation, we can get people into a sense of humor that serve as inoculation, which is more effective than simple takedowns.
Talking about China, because disinformation is also something that sometimes comes from other
jurisdictions.
Yeah, jurisdictions. Let's say it like that. Yeah. So, is there a threat, a real threat coming from China for Taiwan?
There is, according to the. So I'll look at you, but I want to show one example. Let me just quickly find an example. Okay. I found the example. Because you're going to air this before the election, I have to find an example that doesn't feature any of the electoral candidates, which is kind of harder. So just give me another moment. All right, maybe this one. Okay, here we go. So, just answering your question, right, directly. In Taiwan, we have the Taiwan Fact-Checking Center, which is a nonprofit part of the International Fact-Checking Network. And if you go to TFC Taiwan, you can see several pieces of disinformation that have been firmly attributed to the PRC. For example, here is such a piece of disinformation that went trending back in November last year, and it said, quote, the rioters in Hong Kong are paying young people $20 million to murder a police, unquote. And that is, of course, very provocational. It turns people angry and elicit outrage, and so it got viral. And the TFC basically traced the origin to the Weibo account, which is a social media account of Zhongyang Zhenfawei, which is the PRC's Law and Political Commission. And so basically their state propaganda unit. And their unit basically posted a fake poster purported to be something that the Hong Kong people, they say, are recruiting young people to quote-unquote murder the police, except the Cantonese word is wrong, and it used Hanyu Pinyin, which is the Mandarin romanization method that no Cantonese people would use, so not very sophisticated. And more importantly, the photo they used to support such a poster is actually from Reuters, and the Reuters photo says nothing about these 13 years old being paid in any way. And so by doing a full attribution, this is important not to label this as wrong or disinformation, but rather trace its origin into a simplified Chinese posting by the Zhongyang Zhenfawei on the official Weibo account. And there's many of these that then gets remixed and packaged into the local social media.
Yeah. Just for me, for the understanding, because you cannot take examples because it's before the election and you'll know a lot for sure as in this. Okay. Very good example. So you can also, like in certain ways, when I ask for the threat coming from China, there would be like the neutral answer.
That's a very neutral answer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
After election, I can say more, but not now.
Okay, I understand. Okay. Looking at the election coming up right now, is like whenever I spoke to young Taiwanese, older Taiwanese, mid-aged, it looks like they're really split into two parts, kind of, and one is that they are afraid of that if they don't cooperate with China, that not economically, it's going to be really bad. So, looking on the economy in Taiwan and the influence coming from China, is there any impact? I don't know if you can answer that question.
So back in 2014, a lot of people, young people, occupied the parliament for 22 days. It's called the Sunflower Movement. And I was there the night they broke in, providing internet connectivity. One of my most interesting conversations around that time, because there was around 20 different NGOs, each holding deliberation about one aspect of the CSSTA, which is the Cross-Strait Service and Treatment Act, which is exactly how to build more economic ties with the PRC. I participated in one of the deliberations that talked about the 4G movement to build 4G infrastructure. At the time, Taiwan has not yet deployed 4G infrastructure. It's rather new, just like 5G now. And people were deliberating whether we should allow PRC components as part of a normal trade relationship into the infrastructure of Taiwan. And this deliberation result on the street is that no, we must not allow any PRC components in our infrastructure, either core or periphery. And there's two broad consensus of why. The first is that it's not a market force. At any given time, the party, the CCP, can take control of any market company and make them essentially state-owned companies. So there's a threat of escalation. And the second is that when we choose them for 4G, then there's a natural path dependency all the way to 5G and future evolutions, and we don't want this kind of dependency with the PRC. And so that's the consensus on the street. And because of the demands were then met by the head of the parliament, actually the National Communication Commission and the National Security Council agreed with people on the street back in 2014, and we disallowed all PRC components from our 4G infrastructure, while still, of course, making infrastructure for them to use. And so basically, we can continue to conduct economy, but they must not be done at the expense of the security, cybersecurity in this particular case of the society.
Thank you very much.
We're good. Thank you.
Thank you.
And using very safe examples.
Yeah, no, but it's a very good example because we had it. I mean, we did so many stories on Hong Kong, and at the same time we saw how